Welcome to Paintbrush and Ivories, the podcast for artists and curious creatives that connects creativity with the heart and soul. I'm Michelle Walker, and I'm here with my creative soul sister, Jennifer Ruth Russell. Hey, Jen.
Hi. Good to see you again. I'm seeing you, but everyone else is hearing your beautiful voice. I'm so grateful to be here.
And I'm really excited to be here because we're talking about something that I think's dear to both our hearts, and that's creating in community. So off the top of your head, what does that concept mean to you, Jen?
You know, it means playtime. It to me, community means let's come together and do something that's fun for all of us. And when we're doing art or we're doing music, it's the delicious, juicy part of life, you know? So to me, community just makes it a lot more fun. How about
Mm-mm.
you?
This topic kind of emerged from our monthly get together with Spirit Art School, which you host and I occasionally teach in. And today I was a student, and I was just reminded about just the joy of being in a shared space. And that particular one's on Zoom. So we're in a virtual space. And we did have a teacher, a leader, led us through a beautiful class. And I think that, even if we're just all getting together to chat and create, there is an incredible energy that we can get and a recharge of the batteries that can happen when we're creating in community. And I think for me, this is a really broad topic, and there's lots of different ways that I create in community as I think of it. There's formal ways and there's informal ways. So I was curious about your story from a musician's point of view, Jen. How do you think of creating in community when you're thinking about singing and songwriting and performing?
Well, I have to say that ever since I started writing songs, it has been for a community, which is a little bit different than coming together, like we'd say in
Yeah.
a band situation where everybody's coming together to collaborate and let's try this, let's try that, and but we're also creating for something, right? For a performance. So it might be a little different than the visual arts. Maybe not. What do you think?
Well, I think there is some overlap. And when I think about just getting together, so your version of a jam session where there's no real output, it's just the joy of playing. I had those informal art gatherings with my creative friends, and I've got a couple of different groups of creative friends, and we get together semi-regularly. And it really is a time and a place to talk about art, to talk about our own art, what's interesting us, what's kind of what we might be struggling with, and getting input from those other creative minds to help improve or help see a way forward if I'm stuck. That informal creating in community is beautiful. And I loved what you said just before we hopped on, which is community hones us. And I think of that very much within those informal circles because I'm very present in a way that maybe I'm not in other circumstances, because these people, these women, I trust with my creative vulnerability. I can talk about
Mm.
what is not working or how I'm feeling stuck, or at the same time as what's inspiring me, and what do I feel like I'm really nailing and, kind of lifting me up. So there's all of that flavor. So that informal process I think of as you guys getting together and having a jam. But there's
Yeah.
also you're members of a band for a performance in a way is like a joint exhibition where I'm collaborating with another artist or another couple of artists, and we're putting a work together that's going to be on show to an audience. So in a way, we definitely have a goal and a very specific purpose. And can I just say, I've had all sorts of different experiences in that context of creating in community. That sort of collaborative experience has been both delightful and easy. And I've also had, an experience that was quite negative and
Mhm.
almost, well, I say almost, it did destroy a friendship, which made me extremely sad. And there was so much that I was unaware of going into that kind of creating in a community that I hadn't really pre-thought. And I think that that's a really interesting thing when we start to talk about formal collaborations like that.
You hit the nail on the head because when you are coming together to create with someone else, if everyone isn't feeling secure in their artistry, it's going to bring up a lot of the ego issues, right? Which we always have to deal with. Not always. I think we're getting less and less that way. Maybe it's just because of my age. But I know as a young songwriter, I felt very insecure about taking my ideas into a group. Even to this day, I write my songs alone.
Mhm.
And when they're at a certain place, I'm ready to share them. Even with my beloved producer husband, I know that I need to get a song to a certain place before I'm ready to share it because it's in the incubation period. It's in that preciousness of just being formed. And I really don't want anyone else's opinion about it. And now, too, I am at that place where, like, oh yeah, let's just throw it against the wall and see what'll happen. Like it's not as personal to me. Maybe that's the best kind of word to use.
Mm.
I remember when I had been writing songs and I was starting to work in the schools, and I had one other divine idea, like, you need to start a choir in this community of kids. And I did that. And that was such a community teacher for me. I feel like that was the first time I really came, if you want to say, into community with music, dealing with all the families, the kids. There were like 65 kids in this choir from all over this area. And I had to learn really quickly how to lead a community. That's a whole different thing, but it really taught me a lot about what people need in community.
Mm.
That it was so different for me, but I felt it was really a teacher for me.
So what were some of the lessons that emerged from that experience, Jen?
I immediately go to this little kid who was having a hard time being in community because he didn't feel loved, right? If you don't feel loved, you have a hard time being in community. And he would stomp on people's feet, because we would do motions with songs, and all of a sudden he'd pick up his foot and just squash the kid next to him on their top of the foot. And so I had to learn like how to set boundaries, give him a time out. And there was a time that I said to his dad, I said, I don't think that your son is able to be in this community. I really think I need to ask you to leave. And he
Mm.
said to me, well, a community has to deal with all of its members. And I don't think there's anybody in this group that needs this group more than my son. And what you're singing
Mm.
about, because we were singing about all the virtues, right? Compassion, kindness, unity. And he said, my son needs what's here. And he talked me into it. And I kept
Yeah.
that kid. I kept that
Yeah.
kid. And I felt like, having somebody like that in a community situation when you're doing music, we learned how to really embrace him. He became one of us. He
Mm.
wasn't ever easy to get along with, but everybody was okay with him being there and accepted him. So that's the story that comes up to share when you ask
Mm-mm.
me that question.
Acceptance. What a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we've got our own stuff that we, I guess, hide from or isn't so present when we're just working alone. And we are called on occasion to create in community formally as part of our artistry. And
Yes.
there is often an opportunity for us to understand ourselves better and be more of who we want to be, which is, more love, more compassion, more acceptance, more tolerance, more generosity. And
Yes.
that can be a difficult lesson when it turns up. Can I just say it can be a challenge.
Oh, I do tell, do tell.
Well, I notice that sometimes I can feel like I want to be right. That's the thing that if I feel like I'm in my wheelhouse, I'm doing something that I know a bit about and I know how to get it done and in an efficient way, I can get caught out by, then I'll, be more invested in being right rather than being collaborative. And I need to really watch that in myself. And also, I don't feel like I've got the perfectionism thing running as much as I used to have.
Mm.
But I am conscious that there are times when it just pops up and I can feel myself just going from flexible and communicative to something other than that, something a lot more maybe shut down or maybe even protective or competitive. And that's something that we talked about, how do you be in community in a collaborative, generous space when sometimes we're being asked or it's being suggested to us that being competitive is the way to get ahead. Being competitive is the way to make a name for ourselves or whatever the relevant idea is. What do you think about competitive versus collaborative?
Oh, wow. I think that if you come into a community and you're trying to prove yourself, you're going to be more competitive. If you're
Yeah.
coming in to just share, you're going to be more in that place of communion, which I think is the same root word, right, as
Yep.
community, of let's share together. But as soon as you put it into that competitive thing, egos start to get really spiky. What I was,
Spiky is a
you know,
great word. Yay. I get it.
it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, am I going to have as much recognition? Or,
Mm.
it comes up that you want to make sure you get your due, and it really throws everything into a weird space. To me, what I found is that if you have a clear agreement beforehand, it helps a lot. We are going to write this song. I'm going to write the music, and you're going to write the words. That's really clear, right? That's very clear. And I came together with this beautiful man who's now on the other side, and of course he's listening to this conversation. And he had these beautiful words, and he wanted me to write a song about it. And I wrote a song, and he wasn't happy with it. And so I tried to fix it and change it for him, and he was never happy with it. And I just had to let it be because I really was at the end of my creative stuff about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing that happened is when he passed, his partner asked me to sing that song at his memorial, and it was very special. And it is still, I think, a very special song, but sometimes people just aren't going to be happy with what you do.
No, and I understand the concept absolutely of setting boundaries and organizing who's going to do what. And I think that that is good in theory. And it just, when things unravel, is when there is a different worldview, or people actually haven't thought through everything, or you haven't even experienced what there is to know to talk about in advance. And that was certainly my experience. One of my earlier exhibition collaborations that I said didn't end well was because things came up that I never even conceived of.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, I really value communication, there was a whole kind of breakdown of connection and affinity towards each other as people and as practicing artists that really affected that friendship. And we got through the exhibition, but it was because things arose that I wasn't even prepared or expecting or in any way thinking that we would be dealing with that stuff. And it was
Mm-hmm.
more, it was less, it was a bit about the art, but it was more about personal stuff that got in the middle. And so you don't always expect a friendship that's pretty strong to suddenly unravel. And I think that that unexpectedness that's really when we're called to dig deep. And looking back, that situation happened 15 years ago. Would I do something differently? Yeah, possibly. Not even necessarily knowing what was coming, but would I have dealt with it differently? And I think that that's about the growth of, my tolerance and perhaps being a bit older and maybe not quite so reactive. I think that's one of the things that's come with age for me, is just not necessarily being so reactive. And I think that this is one of the things that there is a bit of a mystery/myth about artists being these isolated hermits that just produce work and then bring it out into the world and show it, exhibit it, perform it, whatever it is. And I'm not sure that that is. My experience is that I need a bit of both. I definitely want a
Mm-hmm.
bit of balance. And if I've been spending too much time in my studio, I really can crave an art day with my girlfriends, or vice versa. If I had too many outings, I can just really, really crave a whole string of days where I don't necessarily interact and I've got quiet time. I need to do more quiet thinking these days.
Mm-hmm. I love what you just shared. I think that community not only hones our skills, but hones our ability to be with each other
Mm.
and going deep into, wow, what am I holding on to here that is really not serving this beautiful thing that we're doing together? But you know what? I have to say this out loud. It takes a lot of courage to be in community.
Mm.
It's not for everyone. Or I maybe I should say everyone needs to find their own way in community. I know musicians that have chosen not to play with any other musicians, and you can hear it in their playing. There's no chipping off of the edges that happens as the diamond rolls, in the Turner. It's like the first thing that you notice is time, the sense of timing, which is really important when you're playing in a band. You got to be in time, you got to be with the groove. And also that feel. There's a feel that happens with music that it's so collaborative. You have to like give and take and be in the groove that we're all working in. And I have someone really close to me that refuses to come into community around music. And every once in a while, we'll just say, "Come on, you just got to play with us, just for that kind of fun experience." And you can feel his tension. And
Mm.
then after a while, he'll kind of relax and he'll just play because we love him so much. We just keep saying, "Come on, let's play together." But he really hasn't gotten to that place, and maybe he never will, where he really wants to come and play with others because it's safe when you're playing by yourself. There's no one there to say, "Hey, those eighth notes need to be right there in the center. It's not before or after. You got to come right." I remember when Michael first said that to me when we were first playing, I was like, don't tell me what to do.
Spike.
I know. But I'm so glad he did say that because it made me really conscious of, wow, I need to get my time together. So, yeah, I think it takes a lot of courage. And
Mm.
if you are an introvert or someone that is not very outgoing, I think it's important to keep coming into community on your terms.
Yeah.
What works for you.
And it can be about frequency or it could be about setting and who, can't it? So
Yes,
that's a
yes.
really important thing for us to know. So I feel like there's lots of different ways that I dance into community and then I dance back out again. And
Mm-hmm.
part of my response when we first went into lockdown was to do Saturday afternoon play sessions with whoever wanted to jump on a Zoom call, and we just got online and chatted and painted or stitched or did whatever project people wanted to do. They just brought it along, and it was just that connection. And so that had a very, very specific time and space kind of thing. And we haven't done it since. We did it in the first year of COVID and then it wasn't needed again. And I think that's also the case, that sometimes these settings for us creating in community changes with the season of us or the season of what we're living through, and that's all good as well. Nothing has to be permanent. Nothing has to be fixed in place. And if we're attuned to that and we know our own needs and our own rhythms, then that's really an important part of being a creative, that we can, because it's so nourishing when it is positive and everything's set up right and it's the right frequency for you. It's such an incredible thing to be able to spend a day or spend an hour playing, creating, making music, talking about art, whatever it is.
I have to say something because we are coming out of isolation, all of us, in this beautiful light field. I call it ascension. We're all lifting up into greater amounts of light. And we have a chakra. It's actually right in our belly button. It's called the navel chakra. And it has been hidden within the sacral, which is the womb chakra. And now it's coming back into its own. It's a transcendent chakra. And I want to put a link in this podcast on a morning light meditation that I did around it so people can get a little more familiar with it. But it is our community chakra. It is that place where we open up to each other again and emotional trust and welcome each other as family,
Mm.
as a family of light. And I really feel that we're being asked to come into community again. And communities are changing. I'm going to talk about spiritual community for a minute, because before, spiritual community was like, here's the leader and they know everything and everybody's following them. And now it's like a leader is needing to be transparent and hold a space for everyone to bring their gifts, to bring what they have to share. And it is thrilling to be in a community like that, where somebody is better at this, somebody is better at that. Hey, can you fill in here? Can you do that? And this is what I love. Can I share this? Yeah, please do. It's just, it's exciting to be in community where everyone is heard, everyone has a place to shine. I think it's really important.
Mm. And what a beautiful question to be asked is, what is your gift to share into this community? Because that's really empowering, and you get to claim it as a contributor, as a collaborator, and other people come to recognize that about each of the members of the community, that we start to see our strengths. Because oftentimes we come together and we're not fully known to each other. We might only have one or two dimensions in our experience.
Mm-hmm.
We might know this person as a mother of two kids and someone who likes to do art class, and that might be it. So it's time to also delve into who they are and what's in their heart, because that makes for a beautiful community. And then that in turn allows me, when I'm in that space, to be more present and to be even more generous, I think. No sign of
Beautifully
the
said.
spike.
No, it's a whole different ball game.
So,
And I love it. I love it. I'm so grateful to experience that in my life now, because I remember the fear of just being even in music school, of having, this is your time now. You had to come and do your recital and show everybody what you know. It's such a different energy. It's more like, hey, let's see what you have to offer, and we're all going to appreciate it
yeah.
because it's beautiful, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I think about around my life, and I've got so many different flavors of this community that we're talking about. And one of the ones that I do want to mention is the kind of formal community of artists who get together, who learn together, who perhaps have someone who coordinates the group. And there's quite a few of them around there. And I don't know if this happens in the music industry, but as an antidote to a lot of artists spending time by themselves in their studio, there are these sort of connection points and these communities of artists who may be under the guide of one individual who feels motivated. We come together and we learn all sorts of things. Like I was reading something in one of my art communities this morning that told me about a change to Instagram and what's happening with security on Instagram, and I wouldn't have, left to my own devices, would never have found that in a million years. So there's this sort of, I feel like I'm swimming in a soup of knowledge, and I'm connected to these hive minds of, brilliance, really, because it's sort of the sum of the collection is much better than and much bigger than the individual. I find myself really appreciating those. So I'll give a shout out to Alice Sheridan's Connected Artists Club, because that is one of the groups I'm talking about, and it is one of the places I go to learn specific things about the life of being an artist. And I feel really appreciative that those sorts of communities are out there, and now with technology, they're really available and accessible from wherever you are.
I love it. It reminds me of what Michael does, my husband. He is a student of the guitar, and he loves playing the guitar, and he keeps perfecting his playing. That's really important to him. And so he has a community of about maybe 3 different session players, pedal experts, that he listens to. And then it melds with his other community, which are friends of band players that have been, in his life for years. And they all live in different areas now. So they get together and they're writing songs together. And he's bringing all that he has learned from his study, and they are bringing theirs, here. And they can spend 45 minutes talking about one aspect of it, and it's really a beautiful thing. But all that he's learning and they're learning, they come back together and create and making some amazing music together now. It's really wonderful.
Is the wah wah pedal a thing still, or is that out of date?
Definitely has, it's dated, but from
Yeah.
the little knowledge that I have about pedals, it was like the first, the maiden voyage, right? Now it's like a huge world. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
It's
Beautiful.
amazing.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've covered quite a range of different communities and ways that you and I both create in those communities, from formal to informal, personal stuff. And then the dance between being in community and what that can do for us. And then when we know we need to dance out of community and just go solo and quiet time and create space for ourselves. So that's part of,
So important.
yeah, it's part of being an artist, I think, is figuring some of that stuff out for yourself. And I got to declare, I don't always get the timing right. And sometimes I do too much of one and not enough of the other, but that's all right. We're
Yeah.
still there. Beautiful. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Michelle. How delightful.
Thanks everyone for listening. We so appreciate you tuning in. And till next time, bye for now.
Bye.